Hi there. Welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of music with the love of whiskey. With me tonight, as always, is my good friend Drew Crawley.
Howdy.
Drew, you had a pretty big week.
I had an extremely big week.
Yeah.
Released some new music, have a new
Yep.
single out in the world, played a gig, and oh yeah, got engaged.
Got
So
engaged.
she said yes, despite my best efforts over the last couple of years. She still wants to stick around and make this like a permanent thing, I guess. So yeah, it was a very fun weekend. Got to celebrate with you and Cindy, and a lot of our friends went to Bourbon's Bistro.
Yep.
Friend of the show, Bourbon's Bistro. So it was a nice time.
Was a nice time. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We will toast that again here in a few minutes. But before we get started with too much down the road, we do have Phil Kollin with us of Phil Talks Whiskey.
And hello, everyone.
Phil is a fantastic guy. If you don't know Phil, then this is your lucky day because you're going to get to know Phil. He is one of my favorite people in the whole whiskey realm of things.
I think there's been a terrible mistake. I think you booked inadvertently the wrong Phil, perhaps.
Oh, and I've not made a drummer joke or what have you done since you left Genesis joke. So we'll just kind of leave that at there. But before we get too much further down the road with Phil, we want to tell you about the Bar Cart Co-op. Bar Cart Co-op is a collection of friends who produce content for the whiskey enthusiast. We have a show called Distillers Talk with Alan Bishop and Christy Atkinson. They go into deep dives with distillers from across the country and around the world even, talking with them about their distillation techniques and maturation techniques and grains and you name it. They get into it. It's a really fun show. If you want to know more about what's in that bottle that you've got, how that got there, that's the show you need to be watching. One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute is another effort from Alan Bishop. If you're distilling, you can email him questions and he will answer those questions through videos. He told me today that he checked his email and he had questions from New Zealand and China and parts unknown. So he's really getting international with it. We have My Whiskey Den, which airs every Monday night at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Central, with Pat and with Mike. My Whiskey Den is where craft whiskey is king. They have fantastic guests. They do fun tastings. And it's just a really, really good show. And hey, then you got Bourbon Turntable. You know about us. So while you're sitting here, you're watching this show, go ahead, hit the subscribe button with wherever you're watching or listening so you don't miss anything else. And we have one more message for you right now.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that bell notification to find out when new episodes are coming out, which do come out every single Wednesday on all of the services: Spotify, Apple Music, Google, maybe Amazon, definitely YouTube. And always hit that like button, but hit it an odd number of times. So then that way it stays as a like.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate your help to the show as always. And as we mentioned before, and as you heard a bit of, our guest today is Phil Kollin.
Hey, everyone.
Phil, welcome to Bourbon Turntable, buddy.
Thrilled to be here. Delighted to be here.
Yeah,
glad you're here, man.
You are one of the most positive, optimistic, cheerful people that I know, but especially within the realm of all things whiskey. So
lots to be positive about, especially in the world of whiskey. So it comes pretty easily.
If you're
Have
selling
you tried drinking this stuff? It's phenomenal.
Well, I guess it depends on the person, but it tends to make a lot of people in a much better mood, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So how did you get started in whiskey? Are you a native Kentuckian? Did you grow up with bourbon, or?
I am not. Neither no to both of those. I've been in the Bluegrass State just over 10 years now, I think, if my math is correct. And I grew up, in college years and beyond, drinking a little bit of everything and doing the whiskey thing. But I was largely sipping on scotches, and those had a limited appeal. The smokiness and the peatiness, just never been a huge fan. And as I expanded my horizons and got more into bourbons, then it was like a switch clicked, a light went on, and it's been like as so many others who have walked down the trail of discovering the bourbons or the whiskeys they love and whatever specific subset. It's just been a great voyage of all things bourbon, not just enjoying the product, but learning about the fascinating history and the lore, the business side, the process making it, the everything from soup to nuts when it comes to bourbon. It's just wonderful. I love every element of
it. If you've been in Kentucky about 10 years, and I've probably known you most of the time you've been in Kentucky.
Delightful. Great.
Because you and I met through our common friend Steve Akeley in the ABV network.
Never heard of him.
Yeah. Guy, big beard and blue
looks
glasses.
like Sasquatch. Yeah, I'm with you now. Yeah.
That's the guy. That's the guy. And one of the things that's been great it has been great and will continue to be about ABV Network is it's helped connect a lot of different people in this industry, and for that I will forever be thankful. But you were one of the people that I met through that, and I think you did some things early on Bourbon Daily and things of that nature. Is that correct?
I did, yeah. So Steve and I met, and it was kind of one of those watershed moments because it started a lot of other things. I had been hosting Bourbon Trail Adventures through a bourbon touring company, crisscrossing the state, and it was a wonderful opportunity to get kind of my graduate degree in the bourbon industry, and spend those times in the tour buses parked, and the guests are on tour, talking to everyone from the tour captains, the distillery hosts, to the barrel rollers, to anyone I can bend an ear or just sit and read and learn. And after doing that for a while, the team at the Bourbon Burn, which is a tremendous 3-day bike ride and whiskey festival, said, "Hey, we have a pavilion speaker series in the evening. Would you be interested in coming and sharing some whiskey history?" I said, "That'd be great." So I gave a great presentation about some of the bad boys of whiskey, talking about George Remus and some of the Oliver Babcock and some of these other great names. And Steve Akeley was there, and he introduced himself to me, and I said, "Oh, nice to meet you." And he said, "You should come on and do that on the ABV network." And I did that. He said, "You should come on the Bourbon Daily." And one thing led to another, and next thing I know, I'm a quasi regular on some of their podcasts. And of course, I got to know, and you'll hear me talk a lot about bourbon, but hands down, I can't say this enough, the best thing about bourbon is the people. There's just tremendous
100%.
men and women who are bound together by whiskey, whether it's their interest or their profession or a combination of both. And through Steve and through the ABV network, I've met just a ton of wonderful people. It's been extraordinary.
Yeah.
So that's how that journey went going. And now, honestly, appearing on podcasts is always something I just thoroughly enjoy, because it gives me a chance in an uninterrupted environment to talk whiskey. And it's great if people tune in to listen, but I get to sit down with other people and talk about one of my favorite things. In the case of tonight, two of my favorite things.
Yes.
Whiskey and music. That's what we do. That's what we do.
We throw in the 91 Braves, and we got the trifecta. 3 things I love.
91 Braves. Okay. Okay, not to get off. We'll get off on this tangent for a minute.
Sure.
When I first got out of college and my wife and I got married, we lived in Chattanooga, which is, depending on how fast you drive,
Right.
a casual 90-minute drive from our apartment in Chattanooga to Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. And so we would go to games quite often, just drive down, drive back. And in 1989, 1990, there's nobody there, man.
Yeah.
You just walk up, people are just giving away tickets, and not like nosebleed tickets, like you're 2 rows behind the dugout kind of tickets.
Sure.
And then the 91 Braves happened.
Everything changed.
And we got playoff tickets, and we got World Series tickets, and it was fantastic.
In 1990, seats were so available, there was an over-the-top mascot named Chief Nakahoma, the Atlanta Brave, and he set up a teepee in some of the outfield seats that must have taken up 30, 35 seats.
Wow.
And he would spend most of the game in that and then come out from time to time and wave. But they did no trouble giving up real estate of a giant chunk of the outfield seats for the mascot and his over-the-top teepee.
Yes.
That all went away so fast.
Yeah. So you're okay. Real quick though, what's your connection or your allegiance to the 91 Braves?
I grew up in the Atlanta area.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, of course, that makes sense.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. No, those are fun times to see them go from just being.
It was crazy. It was
terrible.
a wild ride. Nothing like that.
The only problem with the 91 Braves is they didn't have Dale Murphy.
That's right.
And that's
Little fun fact. Do you know the last team Dale Murphy played for before he retired?
Was it the Phillies?
Colorado Rockies.
Okay.
He went to the Phillies and he ended with the Rockies as when they were an expansion team. Yeah.
Wow. He was a great guy. But anyway, enough baseball.
Yeah,
Hey,
right. Two other main topics.
Next up on the sports animal. NCAA tournament. How busted is your bracket? Okay.
Go ahead, caller. Scale of 1 to 10. How bad do you want to fire this coach?
Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame?
Oh,
Take all that next. Okay.
Yeah, right.
All right.
It's the rainy day topic.
Oh my gosh.
So now you are doing Phil Talks Whiskey. So tell us about Phil Talks Whiskey.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. So for a long time, I've been working in a few different tremendous bourbon hospitality related gigs, and people would always call me and they said, "Hey, you took my group out for a tour years ago. I'm coming to town with my brother. Can you take me on a tour? Or, hey, I've got some people in town. Would you be able to come and host a private tasting, or would you be able to lead this presentation in Columbus, Ohio?" And I'd often have to say no, because I had a full-time job. As much as I wanted to do those things, I'd make some exceptions, but the bandwidth wouldn't allow. So eventually I said, why don't I stop saying no and start saying yes to all this? So I started my own whiskey adventure company, and Phil Talks Whiskey is essentially all things bourbon, and it gives me the chance to do what the name says, and that is to talk whiskey. So it's a wide range of different things I do, and it's wonderful because it allows me to stick my finger in all these different pools of experiences and adventures. But they are private tastings, bourbon presentations, virtual educations, charity events, and the occasional Bourbon Trail tour, and all that and more. So basically anything that allows me to talk to people, walk them through a tasting, or just discuss all things whiskey. And that's what it is. It's a one-man show. The only downside is, I guess if I want to hire someone else, they'll also have to be named Phil or Phyllis or Variable Phil. But it's an absolute blast. I've been doing it full-time since about November of 2021, and it's keeping me busy. That's the blessing. That's
great.
Lots of people want to know about whiskey, so it's been really tremendous, and it's fun.
So
it's one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. So I love it.
Good. Well, you're well suited to it. I'll just say, if you've never gotten to hang out with Phil or take a tour with him, one of the more knowledgeable people that I've ever had the pleasure of interacting with. And I think we first met when you brought a group into Old Forester.
Yeah.
And they had just opened that little bar, and I didn't have anything to do. So we sat in there and chatted probably for like an hour and a half until just deep nerdery was going on that day.
I love it.
Fantastic.
It was my favorite part of the tour. So, yeah. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate the compliment.
Absolutely.
Well,
thought the world of the experience they set up at Old Forester, too. Anyone will tell you, again, not to get too off track, but, there's very few bourbon distilleries that aren't worth your time. I'm an advocate, and that just about everyone's worth visiting. That being said, the experience and the knowledge of the tour host you'll have varies wildly. And It all starts from the top down, and how much training they want to give, how much they let you prepare before they set you free. Maker's Mark is infamous. Woodford too, for making sure that you can answer all the questions before you go out there. But there are others who will throw you to the wolves, and they start answering questions wrong. And as a tour host, when you're with your guides, you got to sit back there and bite your thumb because you don't want to correct the distillery person, but you also don't want to have bad information. So hats off to when they opened Old Forester, making sure they had a really well-staffed set of captains and guides who are leading the people through the experience.
Yeah,
cool.
It's important.
It's always difficult when you're on a tour and you hear somebody saying things that are just
so hard.
There's no way that's right. What do you mean? We were at a distillery up in Wisconsin last year, and the tour guide was saying, we are the only distillery in America that does sweet mash.
Mm.
And he kind of went on about that for a couple minutes, and then so I waited till after the tour was over, and I said, "Hey, just so you know, that's not accurate." And I rattled off several that did, and just FYI, because you kind of you need to know these things, because and I think he took it well. I mean, I wasn't rude about it. I could have called him out in front of everybody, but that would have been rude on my part. But
Some of my favorite tours have been at the tiniest craft distilleries, because usually the person leading the tours has a number of other responsibilities at the distillery.
Right.
So just from that working experience, they're so well versed to answer questions
Right.
that are off the 45-minute script that they've learned, because they know how the operation runs. Now, granted, the tour itself usually isn't all that impressive. It's 4.5 rooms and a tasting, usually a product that's still aging, but you get the most affable and knowledgeable people sometimes at these smallest of distilleries.
Yeah.
It's a little counterintuitive in that way too, you know.
Yeah. And that's why every distillery is worth visiting.
Agreed. Big and small. Try them all.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Speaking of trying them all, Phil talks whiskey. Now Phil drinks whiskey.
That's my favorite part.
So I sent blind samples to both Phil and Drew, 3 of them, and cleverly put rubber bands around the sample bottles, a blue one, a red one, and a brown one. And so we are going to taste the blue one first. And we're not, this isn't a test. Okay. But it's just taste as we go through tasting. We'll taste the blue one first, like I said. And as you're going through it, if there are things that you really stand out from a tasting note standpoint, great, say it. If you really like it, great. If you don't, say that too. And then we'll kind of move through these 3, and then we'll talk about them as a group.
I hosted a blind tasting at the Kentucky Castle just a couple weeks ago. It was wonderful, sold out event, and it was the best 10-year Kentucky bourbons. And so they had a limited knowledge to go from, but most of them were casual or bigger fans. This one sucker, this one guy, I dropped an occasional hint. Like clockwork, he identified 3 out of 4 without missing a beat. It was really impressive. And I am so envious of the people who can pick out the notes and do that right away.
Mm-hmm.
He got everyone but the Calumet 10. That's the one he didn't get.
Oh.
It's a tough one.
What were the other 10s that you had?
We had Russell's Reserve 10.
McKenna.
Yep, Henry McKenna 10.
Yeah.
And oh goodness gracious, now I'm blanking on what the other one we had was.
Those were
ones. It was extraordinary.
Eagle Rare.
We did not do Eagle Rare. Oh, we did Bullet 10.
Oh, okay.
Bullet 10.
We wanted to do 4 different distilleries, kind of different combinations of mash bills, price points, and kind of mix it up.
Excellent.
Yeah. The McKenna, the point was I was trying to make with the Henry McKenna when we had it there is that this is a bottle you can buy for $70, but sure tastes like about a $40 bottle. Does it good? Delicious.
Whew. Yep. We'll probably bemoan many things today, but I miss getting McKenna for like $28 every day on the shelf.
Yeah.
And then old Ascot had to go run his mouth, tell everybody our secret.
Old Ascot.
Yeah.
Well, I like this one.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah. I get some sweet notes, some floral. It definitely tastes high proof. I'm going to clock this one in about 115 maybe.
Okay.
And I might even say this is a wheater. This might even be a wheat mash bill. Those are my best guesses.
All right.
Oh, and it's this is the most important thing. I'm fairly confident it's whiskey.
I will say right now, you nailed that.
Bazinga!
Yes, right on target.
Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, so I get some of the sweet and floral as well. I kind of clocked it more as like a bananas fostery kind of thing, like caramelized sugar, but like still the fruity floral kind of side of things.
Yeah, I was thinking that kind of like a malted milkshake, kind of in the same way with that bananas foster.
Yeah, kind of on that side of the spectrum, and then it has a nice like spice presence to it. I have completely trashed my throat and this weekend, so I'm not sure if I'm super accurate with my tasting notes at the moment, but I do like it's not a capsaicin pepper, but it is more like a black pepper or like a chili type spice in the warming sense that I get on the palate. So I wasn't thinking wheater, but that's interesting if it is.
Fully mature and higher proof are the 2 things I feel more confident about. I'm not, when you start talking the spice notes, I'm not getting as much, but I'm hearing you, and that wants me to back off the wheat mash bill.
Okay.
What about you, Kevin? What'd you think?
Well, I know what it is, but I'll say this: I think it does have really nice sweet tones to it. I get some dried fruit, like a dried cranberry note in there, maybe even a lighter fruit, but definitely some dried fruit in there, and the caramel, vanilla, a lot of classic bourbon notes. And I will tell you this: it is a bourbon, so so there you go. All right. Any other comments or thoughts on the Blues Blonde?
When do we find out?
At the end, we'll do all three first.
Okay.
Gosh, patience is not a virtue I possess, sir. That's why the Kentucky Cannonball goes 95 miles an hour when we're trying to get to Makers for the 10 o'clock tour.
All right. So we'll go to the red one now.
Okay. I'm going to pour less out of this one so I don't have to drink it as fast.
I'm going to pour more out of this one just to counterbalance you. Add a little zen to the universe, a little yin to your yang, Drew.
I like it. Ooh. The nose on this one is substantially different.
I always try to look as less presumptuous, as low key as I can when doing a blind tasting.
Yep.
It's not always easy to do. You got to get your master distiller pose.
I know. You gotta look at it like you're fascinated by it, like it just bore your first child. Oh,
yeah. All right, so this one definitely has a little bit more of the herbal, grassy side to it in a way that I really like. It drinks slightly lower in proof than the previous one, but I'm gonna guess they're probably about the same proof, somewhere in that 110 to 115 range, if I'm just guessing. I might eat my words on this, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I would not be surprised if this was an Alan Bishop product. There's some signature spirits or French lick things that I'm kind of picking up. Like I said, my senses are a little dulled, so I could be off there, but that's kind of the road I'm thinking down.
Okay.
Same, the grass, the herbal notes, allspice, cloves, a lot of that, but almost muted by the herbal notes. A lot of bite forward in the tongue, definitely a rye-based bourbon. And you know what? I'm gonna throw the dart. I'm gonna close the eyes. I'm gonna take 10 steps from the dartboard. I'm gonna throw it. I almost feel that this could be bullet. I almost feel that this could be like a bullet barrel strength or a barrel. Oh boy, don't play poker with Kevin. That face still has way out. But that's what I'm sticking by it. A bullet, or maybe one of their sister Diageo products, because it has that almost signature feel to it. I like the first one better, but I like the bite on this one.
Okay.
Me too. This is nice on a cold day too.
But very different than the first one, so that I enjoy in itself.
The nose popped immediately. I wasn't picking up a ton on the nose on the first sample, and this one was just like, whoa. Hey, good morning.
I often tell people, they say, hey, I'm thinking about doing a taste in my home. What should I do? And they run the lineup to me. And I said, you've listed 3 bourbons that are so identical to each other, your guests are going to have trouble pulling the difference or even enjoying themselves. They don't have to be night and day. Don't put the the Angel's Envy next to the Booker's Rye, but like, make sure you have some variety. And when you just taste through 3 similar expressions of a line, you're not giving anyone a good time.
Right.
I would like to be invited to.
Tip for you.
That's a good tip.
I want to be invited to whatever tasting you're doing that has Booker's Rye, because that's some of my favorite stuff of all time.
Yeah, mine too. I was just picking 2 diametrically opposed.
Phil and I actually were at a tasting when it was Booker's Rye.
So good.
So jealous. Any input on this one, Kevin?
No,
Anything you noticed?
I think that there are still some sweet notes there. There's some honey there.
I like the bite.
I do get the herbal stuff.
It is almost like a clover honey or a local like wild honey, where you get kind of it's sweet, but it's not like produced sweet, like just store-bought honey. It's almost like farmer's market kind of a thing with the herbal, grassy tones to it. I really like it.
Long finish too.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. We will go to the brown label, or the brown rubber band bourbon.
No, let me show you guys this, because this is debated in bourbon. So for those listening to the podcast and they can't see, I'm holding up the 50 milliliter glass container that's so ubiquitous. What do you, gentlemen, refer to these vessels as?
Just sample bottles, I think, is what I call them.
The technical term is a Boston round.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You just hear a lot of people call them a lot of different things. So.
Yeah, I usually
just
call
them 50 mils, 50
I
mil
call
samples.
Yeah, I call them 2 ounce samples. So
people from the Northeast, I think, call them nippers, or they call them something because it's they're commonly picked up in the grocery store. So you hear a lot of different things.
Yep. I call them my best friend for sneaking alcohol in the places I'm not supposed to have alcohol.
Good too. Yeah. Are we on to 3?
Not that I would ever
okay.
We're moving on to 3, and then if we need to go back and revisit any of them, we certainly can.
I took my own advice for when I hosted. I saved a little behind so you can revisit and compare and contrast.
Smart.
So, I had to start saying during the tastings after it only had to happen once. And I sat down. I was working with a partner at a venue. They had laid out the tasting beautifully. And I said, all right, let's get started. And one guy had downed all 4 of his samples. I said, well, what have you done? And so I always have to start by saying, we only have one rule, and that's don't drink your whiskey until I tell you to, because Jackass Johnson over here ruined the tasting for himself by finishing all 4 before I even said 10 words out of my mouth. So I always have to get in front and stop that from happening to other people. It's one of those things on the job. It only has something once, and then you realize that every time you got to tell everyone.
It's like, who's that rule for? There's a story for that rule.
Exactly. This rule didn't come out of a vacuum.
Don't get in the hot tub with diarrhea. Like, that was a very specific instance that rule was created for.
When I was in college, they had, kind of electives that were athletic based, everything from soccer to archery. And then there was a big asterisk rule in the course catalog that, like, no more than 6 credits can count towards your graduation, because I'm sure someone along the way realized they could take as many as they wanted and still get a degree. So that rule was in place because somebody was spending their day doing ice hockey and flag football. Well, this is a smooth sipper here, Kev.
Yeah, this one jumps out as so much more approachable, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, because I am enjoying this. But the other 2 had one thing that kind of snapped your neck of attention. This one slowly kind of rolls in with just, it's very, very heavy vanilla bean to me. I know vanilla is like the one thing that we all know is in everyone, but this one really stood out to me. And then also kind of like a pecan note. It almost reminded me of, like the butter pecan ice cream. It's kind of a similar sweet to that. So that's kind of where I'm living on this one. It's just lots of sweet, very approachable, gentle, accessible, whatever word you want to put on it besides smooth. We try to avoid that word on the show, Phil.
Smooth and hot. Smooth and hot.
Yeah. I also get this. I was going to say vanilla and salted caramel, like a salted caramel candy or even a salted caramel ice cream. Sweet. I'm always hesitant to use that word because then people mistake it for like a barrel finish sweetness, or God forbid a Knob Creek maple syrup sweet, which is not the sweet I'm describing. It actually reminds me a touch of one of my all-time favorites, which is Elmer T. Lee. This seems to have the similar approachable notes but natural sweetness to it. I think I saw Drew flinch and how he misses his Elmer out there, like we all do. But yeah, this is a good one. And I think approachable. This is what I'd recommend to someone not even knowing what it is. Reach for the Boston Round with the brown rubber band in the store. I'd recommend this to someone who's new to whiskey because of how approachable it is. Again, in a very positive way. I mean that.
Yeah, I would echo the things you guys have said. I get a little bit of cinnamon in it too, but it is heavy vanilla, nice and sweet,
clean finish.
Yeah,
I think this is also really a product that's been aged a good long time too.
Yeah, well, could be.
I'm on pins and needles, Kevin. I gotta know.
Okay. All right. So, any guesses? Any other guesses on what we're doing? What we've got?
I'm going to go ahead. And so I know that a lot of these could come from small distilleries that I wouldn't even begin to start picking and identifying. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and again throw another blind dart. Hope I don't hit the waitress carrying the beer for the other patrons and say this is a Buffalo Trace product.
Okay.
I was going to go up the Bardstown Bourbon Company road on this one.
Okay.
That's a good guess too. This does remind me a little Fusion series in a way.
Yeah, it just the sweetness reminds me of some of the stuff that I've had from them. Yeah. I'm sure there's tons of distillers that do similar things, but I also know that you might be a particular fan of some of their more new releases. So I'm trying to work the psychology.
I see. Taking a note.
It's usually just a hat rack, but sometimes it's not just a hat rack.
Right.
Well,
Could be two things.
The first one that was in the blue label is Blueprint.
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 Okay.
What do they call it? Blueprint sheet number 1, and it
Interesting.
is a product a sourced product from the folks at Old Steelhouse, which was the old T.W. Samuels distillery down in Cox's Creek in Kentucky. If you haven't been there, you ought to go before they get too much renovation work done, and because right now it's pretty much how they found it. Well, no, it's not how they found it, because it was a real wreck. But you will see a lot of very vintage buildings there that had been left to ruin, and they've gone in and done a really good job salvaging that. But their first bourbon is this Blueprint that is sourced from MGP. It is 6 years old. The mash bill is 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley, and it weighs in at 100 proof.
Just an even 100 proof.
Wow.
That's good. It's a winner.
Interesting.
Good job.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very good. And also, I kind of like that it drinks a little hotter than it is.
Yeah.
That's a whiskey that I could get behind in terms of, hey, we're setting ourselves up for an evening. If we're going to be at the house or we're going to be going out, or either way, knowing that it's 100 proof, but it has a little bit more of that, I don't want to say kick in a negative way, but just a little bit more of that, oh, hey, there we are. Like presence is more the word I'm looking for. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
All right. The second one, which was the
Well done. Good job, Blueprint people.
red sample,
Yes.
is Smoke
Wagon.
Smoke Wagon, the uncut, the younger is what they call it. And it is from the folks at H&C Distilling out in Las Vegas, Nevada, or Las Vegas, as some people call it. But they've H&C has several different expressions now of Smoke Wagon, and where you used to couldn't find any of it on the shelf, now you can find quite a few of their products out there. I
see it regularly at well-stocked stores.
Yep. So Smoke Wagon, this is there's not an age statement on it, but things I've read put it in somewhere between 4 and 5 years. It is 60% corn, 36% rye, 4% malted barley. And
that's all right. That would explain all the bite. That would explain the spice notes.
Yep. Tips the scale at 116.34.
116.
Yep.
That's always the funny thing about proof. And I'll say this to anyone who listens. We had 100 proof and 116 proof, and I would not have put them 16 proof points, different.
Right. I would agree.
And I would have 8% different alcohol percentages in there. It's amazing how you can't judge a bottle purely by its proof. Now, I'm not saying 139 proof will knock down your keister, but the 100 116, they tasted far more both in the middle of that number for both of them.
Right.
It's remarkable.
Well, and the bourbon tasting that I referenced that you and I were at, we tried the Booker's Rye afterward, but that whole thing was to taste 4 or 5 whiskeys blind and try to identify low proof to high proof, and you really couldn't do it.
No.
So, all right, last one is George Remus single barrel, and
that old so-and-so.
Yep, it is 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley, so it's the same mash bill as Blueprint. I do not have an age number on it.
I thought the Remuses were all about the total transparency and the closure and putting everything on there, including the.
It's not on there. I don't see it anywhere. But
what's the proof on this one?
It is 114.8.
No kidding.
Cask strength. Yep. So.
Hachi Machi. I would not have guessed that.
Yep. So each of these is from MGP. One is an MGP product that it's their own that they now call Ross and Squibb. The other two are sourced from MGP. So the fact that as you walk through these tastings, no one really got, hey, this tastes very much like this other. That's interesting. But any overall impressions on these three now that you know what they are, Phil?
Well, delightful. Two things. One, I can't wait for you to go back and edit the show to take out my terrible guesses that were highly inaccurate and way off the mark.
That's
So
very
thanks in advance for
no.
thanks for
I mean,
doing that.
there are only several hundreds, if not thousands, of whiskeys out in the world. So to try to guess one would be very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, mistakes are made on that. I think in general, the journey of people's perception and just seeing their reaction when you hear something from MGP has gone from eyebrow raising, like, oh, MGP, I've heard of that. They make quality whiskey, to, oh, another MGP. And this is where I think it gets tricky, because this is my hot take and strong opinion for the evening. And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that when it comes to the rye whiskeys, MGP has one rye product that's that 95% rye and 5% ounce that's fairly ubiquitous. And I think an MGP rye, mostly maybe due to the strong taste and flavor of an MGP rye, tastes the same from distillery to distillery unless they've done the secondary finishing. But I think people underestimate, with as much stock as they have, with as much resource they have, with as many barrels they put away, how different the bourbons they put out can be. And this is a tremendous example.
Yeah.
Hot damn.
Yep.
Do you guys agree on the
Good
rye?
stuff.
Is there a variety of MGP ryes, or is there just kind of that one?
I'm only aware of the 95.5. I've not actually been on their site where they allow, bulk ordering and things like that to know if there are other options. But you just hear.
I might start a fake distillery just so I can get the tour at MGP and find out what they have. What's the name of your bourbon? The left shoe whiskey. Don't look it up.
They have a 51% rye also.
They do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the one that I think gets, and I don't know if how much of that is gets out in the sourcing market. Most of what I see out there is the 95.5, but there is a 51% rye, 45% corn, 4% malted barley.
Huh. Well, these are three great examples of three very different bourbons that came from the same spot.
So my question to you both.
Yes.
And I'd like you to take it. I want to give you the answers to this question as well.
Okay.
Okay. Because the answer is yes and the answer is no. So the question is MGP good for whiskey? Not as it make good whiskey, but is MGP good for whiskey? And I'd like you guys to think about why it is yes and why it might be no.
I think, and I'll come back to I'll let Drew answer, and I'll come back to my reasoning, but I think unequivocally, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I would be inclined to agree. I think the answer is yes. Is it good for whiskey as a whole? There are some things that I would like to improve. The overall ability of somebody starting out. We can list the extremely successful distilleries that have launched product from MGP as a way of getting revenue and things of that nature. There are a lot of distilleries that make products I love that we wouldn't have if it wasn't for MGP and helping people get their started having product on the shelf. So I love that. My one complaint, if there was any, is there's two. One is ubiquity. The fact that we could sit here and have three different brands.
That's the name of my new bourbon brand is Ubiquity. It's all MGP. It's called Ubiquity.
There you go. So having there be, I would say, if you go into your average liquor barn or Total Wine, there's probably 30 brands on the shelf that are all MGP. Very few of them do anything different. Very few of them do anything different with filtration, aging, proof, any of it. And the price points are all over the map, just depending on the needs of that distillery. So the ubiquity has kind of frustrated me. The other thing that I would really like to see, and it's something I think Bardstown Bourbon Company and Wilderness Trail are both doing great with their contract work, is transparency.
Yeah.
I am sick of NDAs when it comes to whiskey sourcing and being lied to by brand reps and liquor store owners and honestly brands too. And I don't know how much of that is controlled by the people sourcing and how much of that is controlled by MGP. But if I had two complaints, obviously I'm a fan. I'm so glad that they exist. But if I had two complaints, it's be more selective with who you work with. And when you work with somebody, make sure that they tell us what's going on.
Mm.
Mm.
I like dig it. So what I was going to say is I'd like to report a mugging because Drew stole the exact things I was going to say.
Sorry.
The reason I said it, no, that's good. We're on the same page. The reason I think it's unequivocally good is because there are brands today I love who have made the transition to distilling, bottling, and selling and aging their own product. And they used MGP as a stopgap to make sure that they could get their product on the market to make a name for themselves. And most importantly, to generate revenue during a very tough time in a business's startup where it's either sit and wait, don't sell anything, or bank on flavored moonshine and vodka to get you through. So I think MGP is wonderful for that. And I think some of the brands I love today, 3, 5, 7, even 10 years later, who got started with MGP, a lot of them have moved on to their own product and found their own voice and their own signature expressions, and it's wonderful. To your point, Drew, what I was going to say too is that the fakers fade out. The ones who do nothing but rebottle it at a higher price with a half-baked story and don't seem to have any plans to expand, to create their own product, to build their own narrative. Those are the ones that seem to sit on the shelf. I'm not a fan of the phrase shelf turd, but when you take a product and you don't do much for it and you charge a higher than market price, eventually that's what it becomes. And so I feel that the people who do that business method through MGP will eventually fade out if they don't take the reins and make themselves stand out. And the best way to stand out, of course, is by making your own product. So I think MGP has provided a tremendous asset. Yes, they're great for the business because they've let some brands get a quicker start, a foot in the door, get the products on shelves where they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And I'm sure we both can think of half a dozen brands off the top of our head, if not a dozen, in Kentucky alone that have been able to do that. So thumbs high to MGP from my point of view.
Yep.
Definitely. Well, let me just put a little case study in front of the both of you and see what you think. Is OZ Tyler / Green River. They did not source from MGP. They hard launched, their own product that was substandard. I don't know a nice way to say that.
That's a nice way to say that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. But then ultimately launched their own product that's very good, very available, all that kind of stuff. MGP would have been another resource that they could have done rather than putting out a substandard product of their own up front. Put your own stuff out, or put MGP stuff out under your label. Probably builds better brand loyalty. It was a hard sell, I think, for a lot of us bourbon geeks to try Green River Distilling
after the reputation they had with OZ Tyler.
Yeah.
But it's
just to kind
Green
of
River's
give
good.
another layer to your point. Yeah. I like Green River too, and for $30, it's tough to beat that price point. Yeah. So, anyway,
this is great. We're solving all the problems of the whiskey world in one podcast this morning.
Yeah, I mean, there are.
Once again, we do this every week. And
eventually we'll solve all the problems. I think there are. I read where there were 200 different brands that the whiskey is actually being sourced from MGP.
Wow.
And if you earlier this week I went through and was just going through the ship, just label browsing at a liquor store. And first of all, label issues are just another topic for another day, but man, there's some really bad ones out there. But there's some really good ones too. I think you can, if you pick up something and you can't easily identify where it was distilled, and at least where it was distilled, then just put it back on the shelf and walk away, because you're just playing bourbon roulette at that point. Patronize the people that are being transparent and are doing you the honor and giving you the respect as a consumer to tell you exactly what's in that bottle. But there are a lot that are distilled in Indiana, okay? And that Indiana isn't Old 55, and it's not Spirits of French Lick.
It's not hard truth. Yeah,
it's not hard truth. It's MGP, and that's okay. Just say that. And there are brands out there that they're right up front. Yep, MGP. Here you go. We were tasting bourbons tonight, but we threw out the rye that gets sourced. Buzzard's Roost, they're very, very transparent about the fact this is from MGP, and this is what we do to it after we get it from MGP, and it's great. And they've been very successful with it, and kudos to them for doing it what I would consider the right way. But I think there's some education that needs to go on with the consumer that know what you're drinking. And I've seen posts a number of different times on bourbon Facebook groups and such, where somebody has said, "Hey, I'm at the store and I'm looking at this, this, and this. What do you think I should get?" Well, you've just listed 3 6-year MGP products, so it doesn't really matter.
Have fun. Pick the lowest price one,
whichever one's cheaper.
Yep.
So
I think it's funny because it's a fine line that sometimes the distilleries feel they have to walk if the situation called for them to have a non-disclosure agreement in place where they have to not share some information. But I also think there's ways around it. I was in a group with a distillery rep, and they were talking about how they're making their own product now, but they've leaned on someone else, and he wasn't going to say anything. And of course, a young lady raised her hand, and she goes, "Well, where did this whiskey originally came from?" And he paused. He goes, "Well, I'm not allowed to tell you, but it rhymes with Schmartens." And I thought that was just such a wonderful, clever way to be straightforward without saying too much. And like half of us laughed, and she just looked confused. It's like, good enough, So there's always, my point is, even if the distilleries say, "Well, we're not allowed to tell you that," there's always ways to be transparent. Look at the OKI label. It was a great way. It was enjoyed in Ohio, bottled in Kentucky, distilled in Indiana. It's a very clever way to add some transparency to your label by putting it right in the title.
Yeah. But okay. Well, and a lot of times, I'll see, a new brand out there, and the first thing I want to know, okay, is this more MGP sourced whiskey? And I don't necessarily get excited about it if I learn that it is. But I think walking through this process tonight has opened my mind a little bit more to that doesn't mean just reject it on the face of it either.
Agreed. Yeah. Never reject anything on the face. These are 3 really solid pours. You did extraordinary, Kevin.
Thank you. I thought they were good. And none were incredibly expensive. I think $50 ish, in that range, $45-$55. So
excellent.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Too
Not
shabby.
bad at all. Hey, we're going to start talking some music here in a minute, but before we
fantastic.
do, we want to make sure that Phil gets a chance to tell you again about Phil Talks Whiskey.
Yeah. Oh,
Look at that good. Look at that good-looking guy.
Oh, I gotta get a screenshot or some of that. That was great.
So tell us what you're doing, how people contact you, and what you can do for them. And
my biggest strength is that every custom adventure that we host surrounding whiskey is just that. It's unique and custom. So if you've got 2 people, or if you've got 102 people, we can put something together that's going to be engaging. It's going to be fun. It's going to be informative. And all around, it's just going to be a blast of a time because I do this to have fun. So I've hosted tastings and presentations in boathouses, outhouses, hotels, motels, Holiday Inns. So I've traveled everywhere. If it's a good fit for what you're looking for, it's something I'm happy to build a program and do. So we've done blind tastings. We've done histories where we talk about the early days of bourbon. We've done things that focus on the Derby. Kentucky Derby season's coming up. So essentially, it's a range of really fun custom bourbon adventure programs. I'm never really good about talking about myself, but get in touch with me and we'll work to build something. The best ways to connect with me are both on social media. I say the funny things on Twitter at Derby City Phil, and I post pretty pictures on Instagram at Derby City Phil, and then I'm on Facebook at Phil Talks Whiskey. I've got a terrible website that really needs to be updated, but it's got my contact information there too. And you can always email me, Phil, at Phil Talks Whiskey, whiskey with the E, because we want to be inclusive to just about everything. And yeah, we'll have a blast.
Yeah. I thought you were about to launch into the Tommy Lee Jones quote from The Fugitive. Every outhouse, hen house, farmhouse,
Oh, right.
warehouse.
For The Fugitive, yeah. No,
So, but
great movie.
Yeah. Anyway, congratulations again on that success. And
Thanks.
are there any available to the public events that you're doing right now? Or are they all private events?
Yeah, so it's funny how the business has really dictated where this has gone, and I thought that there'd be two things I'd be doing a lot more of that I'm not, and one is Bourbon Trail tours. But the Bourbon Trail has changed significantly post-COVID. One is that people came back with a passion for whiskey, and they, people had it on their bucket list, bumped it up, and tourism was through the roof, and more people were hitting the Bourbon Trail than ever. On the other side, distilleries, they're all back open and operating. They have really cut back the number of tours they offer in a day and the number of people they can host on a tour. Woodford Reserve is a good example. They used to have a bus. They loaded up with 26 people and just drive to the bottom of the hill. Well, they got rid of the bus and they cut the tour in like a third of the size.
Wow.
They set up a Bourbon Trail tour. Used to be, 3 phone calls, 2 forms, and about an hour's of work. Now it's a lot more complicated and planning in advance to put on a really great bourbon tour. So I find myself doing less of those. And I want to really dial up the public events where people can buy a ticket and show up and just do those. But I've been booked for so many private events and corporate events and such like that. Look for them in the rest of 2023. I've been doing a monthly series at the Kentucky Castle outside of Lexington, where we host in their beautiful ballroom all sorts of different whiskey events. Just most recently, before this will have aired, we did an Irish whiskey versus Kentucky bourbon, where we did a tasting of each and talked through the brands. Because it's not just Phil Talks bourbon; it's all whiskeys.
Right.
Although bourbon is my soft spot, my love in my heart. So I'm looking to do more public events. I've got a lot of them in the idea hopper, but unless you crank the idea hopper, it just kind of sits there.
Yeah.
So
No, I like it. Like it. Well,
what a long answer to your short question.
That's,
by the way,
it's a thorough response.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you can ask a short question that gets a long response, then you've asked a good question.
Well done, Kevin.
Yeah.
Well done.
Pat on my back. But we will monitor Phil's social media and his schedule as well, and we'll share that on our social media.
Let me run this idea by you. This is an idea for a tasting I had maybe in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about blind tastings. We had fun with them tonight. I want to separate the big mouths from the really knowledgeable people who are eager to try it, people see what they taste, and do a blind tasting called Can You Pick Out the Pappy? And have 4 pours, and they'd all be wheated, and maybe some higher ends there, maybe even another Buffalo Trace wheat mash bill product, 4 pours, and then see if the people can identify the pappy. Put their money where their mouth is. Say, oh, I'd love to pay for it, and see if they can really tell if one's better. You think that'd be a good event? Do you think that'd be something people would be interested in doing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a disappointment in the audience when it turns out they're convinced that they love Pappy and they love Everyday Maker's Mark, and that's their favorite.
I've done that on a small scale.
For this bottle. You chose Larceny barrel strength, sir.
Yes.
Please
I've done that on a small scale.
Have you?
And there were, I think there were 4 wheated bourbons in the tasting, and I think Pappy came in 3rd. The Pappy 15, I think, came in 3rd. But it's a great. The whole point was label bias.
Yeah, of course.
And but I think that is something that's worth doing and revisiting and presenting that to as many people as you can. Because what you'll find is that $35, $50 bottle that I pass up every time I go to the liquor store, asking the clerk if there's anything in the back. You don't need to go to the back. If you really, unless you're just wanting to show off, buy this and drink it.
Yeah.
Tremendous. But I think it's a great idea. Yeah.
So fun events like that. I've got a lot of ideas.
Yeah. Well, good.
I was going to do something on a boat, and then I looked into logistics, and then I decided that was fraught with peril and a bad idea. I had a big boat event planned.
Now go to our friend Joey Kasperzak.
Okay.
Now at Patoka Lake Winery. Contact her.
She have a boat?
Well, they have lots of boats at Patoka Lake Winery. They rent out boats by the score. So,
All right, I'll reach out.
yep. So, matter of fact, I was texting with her right before this. I'll make sure that she looks for your call or email. So
Delightful.
see,
and the other great thing about this gig is it's got me traveling to places I've never been. 3 weeks ago now, I was in Paducah. I'd never been to Paducah before, and I was a little mad that no one had ever told me to visit the charming downtown area that is Paducah. I had a blast in Paducah.
Paducah.
Yeah, it was a long, boring drive out to Paducah.
It is.
I almost fell asleep 7 times on that Western Kentucky Parkway, but I made it.
Yeah, you can drive to a lot of interesting places in the amount of time it takes you to drive to Paducah.
That's right.
That is a downside. That is a downside.
But
once I was there, I had an absolute blast.
Some good whiskey and some fine bluegrass players come from Paducah. So
and quilts.
Very cool.
Anyway, the nice thing about this is it's got me traveling to unexpected places I've not yet seen for various bourbon events, which has been nice.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk music. How about that?
Oh,
Phil talks music.
Yeah.
All right.
My lesser known business.
Yes. So let me ask you this first. Are you a musician at all? Do you play an instrument?
No.
Do you sing?
No.
I know you do a lot of impressions. I didn't call
impressions
you
of musicians sometimes, yes.
Okay, so do you have any impressions of musicians you want to share with us tonight? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but
let me get back to that one.
Okay. All right. You can kind of think on that while you're talking music. And
all right.
So
I can read music. I have appreciation of music. If you put me down on a piano and gave me the sheet music to Aerosmith's Sweet Emotion, I could probably muddle my way through it.
Okay.
Outstanding.
Next time on Bourbon Turntable.
yeah. We blindly get Phil sheet music to a classic and see if we can remember which note is the C.
Don't. We block out the name and just give you the sheet music. Name that tune.
Right.
Yes. I like that.
So I'm a big music fan. I grew up listening to a ton of music. I mean, who among us isn't? But I love music.
Yeah. You remember your first album?
Very much so. So it's harder because growing up in the cassette era. So I had different mixtapes and tapes and stuff off the radio and a few tapes to get. But my first CD, which I still have, was given to me a compact disc on my birthday when I turned, I think, 12.
Yep.
And Kevin Lackey gave it to me because he knew I had some cassettes and I was a big fan of the band. And it was Led Zeppelin 3.
Oh,
and that was the first CD I had. And I promptly went out and I got a small CD tower and I put all the other CDs in there as I got them. And I played the heck out of Led Zeppelin 3. And it was one of the Led Zeppelin albums I didn't own because I had owned a few others. Yeah. But I always remember that was the first one I took home and put in my CD player.
Cranking up the Immigrant Song from the very beginning.
Yes.
Awesome.
Track 1.
Yeah. That's great. Do you remember your first concert? If you tell me it's Led Zeppelin, I'll hit you.
My first concert was Led Zeppelin. One of my best concerts was Robert Plant and Alison Krauss.
Oh, yeah.
But unfortunately, my first concert was about the same time I got my first CD, and it was free tickets my friend and I got from a radio station for a Toys for Tots drive. And it was Information Society and En Vogue at the Omni, where the Hawks played in Atlanta. And that was my first experience with live music, and I've been seeing shows ever since then to wash the taste out of my mouth.
Yes.
Information Society, if you remember, that new wave flash band.
Vaguely, that's a stretch.
Their big hit was that they wanted to know what you were thinking. Tell them what's on your mind. That was their big song.
Okay, correct. So
many other better concerts.
Good. Do you remember your last concert?
Yeah, it was just a few weeks ago, and it was one of my first true post-pandemic like concert events. My wife took me to see Death Cab for Cutie down at Paris Town Hall.
Yeah,
and it was a blast. It was a great. Were you there, Drew?
I was there. I was.
Hey, how about that?
Yeah.
I thought I'd see more people I knew, but the venue itself isn't very. Hey, look over there! It was pretty crowded, and I didn't get to see a lot of familiar faces. But I hadn't been to a good show like that in a long time, and it was tremendous. And I realized that there's a whole lot of bands out there right now, like Death Cube. Death Cube
is a great metal band name. Yes.
Death Cab, who have been putting out music, for the better part of 15 or 20 years, but are still putting out new music. So they're still very much in the veins, very much at the top of their game. And now I want to go see bands like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and Spoon and Metric. And I started thinking about all these other bands out there that are in this fold that I would love to see that are touring and coming to town. So I'd like to think I have a renewed taste for some great touring bands. So I saw that. It was great. They put on a phenomenal show. I did feel like, Drew, I don't know if you felt like this, but I did feel it was kind of like Ben Gibbard and company. Like it was him and like supporting players. And not that they weren't, great musicians and part of the band, but it really felt like his show. Like he was calling the shots.
Nope, I definitely agree with that. And I mean, that happens when you change band members as frequently as they have. But
right. He had a co-writing partner who was the guitar player who's with him forever, who left better part of 5-6 years ago, right?
Yes, I think it was 2016 was his last, at least the last project that he was credited on.
Yeah,
Chris something or another.
Right, yeah. I was gonna say Chris something. So Ben Gibbard's one of the only guys that's been there since day one.
Yes. Well, are you a music festival person at all, Phil? Can you tolerate that? Okay. Well, I was just to say. We have guests on the show, believe it or not, that are like, I will never go to a music festival. They're just over it.
Listen,
but
I'm not doing Bonnaroo. I'm not sleeping in a tent anymore. But when they come to town and I can go to the comfy confines of my house or a nearby hotel, then hell yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was what I was going to say, is because Yeah Yeahs and Spoon are both at Bonnaroo this year. I didn't know if you might make the trek down to Tennessee.
No. It's not the Bonnaroo itself. It's the where do we go now? There's the tent.
Yeah.
It's like I'm a little too old for the Kentucky Derby infield, and I think I'm a little too old for the camping out after a concert. Maybe glamping. Glamping.
There you go. So you just get you an RV.
Yeah, I love a good RV. That was my first concert and my most recent concert.
Yeah. What was your favorite concert?
My favorite concert of all time. There's a lot to choose from, so I'm going to go like in a kind of a different direction. It was in the early 2000s, and Mike Doty had left Soul Coughing, and he was just trying to find his way as a solo artist and musician. And he played a venue called the Southgate House in northern Kentucky, in Newport, Kentucky. And it was tremendous. Actually, I'll do two stories because they both are meaningful in their own way. And there was not a huge crowd, maybe 700 or 800, but they were very engaged and they knew his album. And it felt like an evening in conversation and songs with Mike Doty. He took requests from the audience. He made very engaging jokes. He was just so sharp and clever. But most importantly, he struck you as this guy who'd been there, done that with some commercial fame, with the alternative success that Soul Coughing had, and was ready just to be out there and do his own thing. And I still remember so much from the show, the acoustic versions of Soul Coughing, his own heartfelt songs, the joke he made. Somebody shouted Freebird. And I'm sure he did this at every show he went to. He said, Freebird? Freebird? You don't know what Freebird means. That's actually Latin for 7 guitars playing, some at the same time, some at the other. And it was just a really engaging, felt one with the artist show. So that was great.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal that line.
Some people, when I yell Freebird at their concerts, they just insult me. So,
I would never. Yeah, sorry. You know I love you, but I it's a bit now. We've committed to it, and I'm going to stick with it till the day I die.
Gotta have a good routine.
Is there a time in your life that you felt like this was my high point for music, that I'm into so many different bands, or this is the era of music that kind of best defines Phil?
I always have trouble with that one because the answer is both yes, multiple times and multiple things. But I always fight the battle of friends who call me and they say, man, whatever happened to rock and roll? Or there's just no good music today. Or today's music blows donkey nuts. And I'm like, You're just not paying attention. Allow me to put a playlist together of some tremendous music.
Right.
And they don't play it on your favorite radio station anymore, although shout out to WFPK, but not many cities have a WFPK. And it's harder to find, it's harder to access. And so it really annoys me when people, I don't want to be perceived as someone who puts on those looking back glasses and say music was better when, because I've got so many friends who do nothing but talk about the great times. Right. And it pains me because I'm gonna rag on some bands, because some bands trade on that a little bit. Weezer comes to mind, and Red Hot Chili Peppers. I get kind of worked up about this. I don't mean to disparage Rivers Cuomo, but you're a 50-something-year-old man who's still writing songs like you're a 23-year-old angst-ridden, lonesome, unsuccessful meathead. Like, and Red Hot Chili Peppers haven't sounded original 15 years, you know? And so I think that's what's reinforcing this. Like, all my favorite bands, you know, are this, and there's so much new great music out there just all the time. So I don't really have one era that I associate with. I have lots, and I feel bad about pinning down one, because then I feel like about steering into the stereotype my friends have about all the great music's gone, when I would argue till I'm red in the face that's not the case.
Yep, I agree. That's one of our favorite things about this show is, you know, Kevin and I have a group chat where we send each other, you know, new bands or new albums all the time. When we have guests on, they recommend somebody that they've been enjoying that maybe we've heard of or maybe we haven't. And just the amount of discovering of new music that we get to do is a huge part of why we love doing the show. So that's a question I have for you. Is there a new band or a new record that's in your life that you would recommend to us to check out?
Yeah, so from the kind of pop punk, but man, have they got it down, and they sound tight. Paramore has a new album out,
yes,
and it's
so
every
good.
song is a sizzler. It's like they locked themselves in a room for 3 months and just made every track as tight as possible, and it's fun and it's accessible. I actually love what I've been hearing for Paramore. I think that's great.
Yep. I will be seeing them hopefully as close to the stage as possible at Bonnaroo.
Excellent.
That was one of the reasons I bought a ticket, was to see Paramore this year.
I know that's not really an undercover band, but I think they went away for a few years, and I think their return is in this last few months has just been wonderful. So love to have heard them.
The people that that say there's not any good music anymore, or rock is dead, are the same people that, you know, I love Evan Williams bottled in bond.
Right. And you can't tell me there's a better bottle on the market.
Right. They don't make bourbon like that anymore. Well, one, they do. But they also make and that's great. I love that. I'll drink that too. And I'll also drink, you know, Lee Davis Sinclair from Spirits of French Lick, or I'll drink Blueprint whiskey.
Yeah, they tend to be the same people.
And Evan Williams bottled in bond is great. Led Zeppelin is great, and I'll listen to that a lot. But expand your musical palette as well. And you know, like Drew said, that's one of the things that we try to do is we'll do shows that are just new music, new whiskey, things that you're listening to. We'll, you know, most every Friday I'll put out 4 new songs that have been released during that week that, hey, here's some stuff to try. Here's some things to listen to. It's 15, 20 minutes of your day. If you don't like it, okay, no big loss, but try something different. Listen to something different. And because there is a lot of great music out there, and the way artists are paid now, you need to really embrace the new ones that you love, because they're not going to make a lot of money with you streaming their album on Spotify. You know, if you really love them, you know, order that album on vinyl or CD, or go to the concert, or order some merch, and really get into some of this new music, because there's some really good stuff out there. Yeah. So if we're traveling with you to Paducah, Kentucky to go to an event, what's on the playlist as we're driving that way? First of all, it'd have to be a really long playlist.
Yeah, it might just be 3 hours of Rammstein to keep us awake, so we're banging our head and singing Du Hast the whole time. I have some wonderful traveling through Kentucky tunes that I love, and how many shall I share? I'll do just a couple to start out. One that always puts people in the mood is Eastbound and Down by Jerry Reed, the tune from Smokey and the Bandit.
Yes.
It's just a phenomenal one for kind of getting out there. It sets the tone. Kentucky back roads and highways. I always love some Trampled by Turtles, because it's modern bluegrass. It shows how rockin' bluegrass can really be. I had the pleasure to see them live several years ago at Forecastle, and they reflected every bit of that energy they put out on the album. Another great one is kind of from the same Jerry Reed genre is Eddie Rabbitt and Driving My Life Away. And it's just got that kind of both slow-paced and urgency in the same vibe. It's played in a keeps you moving, but the lyrics have the sense of we got to get where we're going, and it'll throw the way.
Yeah.
And then 2 from left field, and these are on the way back. You've had a long day. You're eager to wrap it up. You've had that bachelor party, and they played Regulators by Warren G 15 times. So you need to mix it up. There's a song by Quincy Jones that's called "The Street Beater," and do you know what that song is?
I've not heard that one.
Do not.
You have, because "The Street Beater" is the Sanford and Son theme. But the song itself, it's an album version, and it's much longer than the 45-second intro to the song, and it's funky, and it's an instrumental, and it's just a great Quincy Jones song. And it's called "The Street Beater," and that harmonica reprises itself throughout it. It's great. And
I'm going to be checking that out.
You should. And the last one, and this is like the get everyone on the dance floor. There's no parking on the dance floor. Get your butt out of your seat. That everyone loves, even if they say they won't. Is Apache by the Sugar Hill Gang, and it's so over the top, and the rapping is so just piss poor and hilariously low effort, but it's also so catchy because it plays on an old riff that had been used in the clubs for 15 years prior. So those are 4 or 5 of my absolute favorite tunes to put on and get people's attention when driving, the back roads of Kentucky. I love each and every one of those.
And that is going from extreme to extreme. So it
really is. Well, that's what keeps people engaged, right? That's what keeps them. Drew knows you got to change the set list up halfway through. You'll get people up there. Oh, and one more. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save the best for last. I'm going to put this at the top of the list. There's nothing better than when you take a popular song and reimagine it with a Kentucky twist. And the infamous String Dusters. Are you guys familiar with the infamous String Dusters?
Yes.
Oh, yes, they say. They do a version of U2's In God's Country. And it's one of those amazing cover songs where the entire meaning is turned on its head by hearing it through that lens and that filter. And they sound like they're singing about an entirely different place than Bono and the boys are.
Love it.
There you go. Those are some of the road trip songs
Great
I love to put on. Thanks, man.
I've got some listening to do this weekend.
They're fun.
Well,
take them for what they're worth. I'm not saying you're going to discover auditory gems that are going to change your life. I'm just saying these are fun songs to drive around and listen to.
No, that's great stuff. So one of the things that you mentioned when we were talking and planning this show was reminiscing or listing some of the musicians that we miss.
Yeah, I was thinking recent ones of the last several years. Yeah. I mean, we all miss Jimi Hendrix, but that's not what I was kind of focusing on. People have left us recently.
Jim Morrison. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Did you? So David Crosby isn't on my list, but David Crosby recently passed. Did you know David Crosby hated the Doors? Like it was like an ignition point. Like he was the guy. The Doors had been gone for years, and he wouldn't miss an opportunity to talk trash about the Doors if someone opened that door for him. Really weird.
I think David Crosby's the kind of guy that hated about everything else except for David Crosby.
That makes sense.
Not to disparage David Crosby, but I don't think that he was a real happy guy.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But anyway,
so there's a lot of guys. And maybe it's just the age I'm in. Maybe it's just paying attention. Maybe some of these guys are older. But there's been a lot of more recent Jeff Beck. More recently, a shocking deaths of people who've been making music for a long time. Yeah. And 2 that are on my list. I'd love to hear it from you guys too. What kind of tops yours? But I still 2 guys I really miss that I'm still bummed they're gone. That I'm still bummed we won't get any new music from them. Although they both have back catalogs of unreleased stuff. Is Prince.
Yep.
And David Bowie.
Yeah.
I'm so sad that neither of those people are going to perform another jaw-dropping show or put out another innovative album or have one last funky hit or like just amazing guitar work. Those are 2 I'm like, oh man, I really wish Prince or David Bowie were still around.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
We lost Bowie and Prince within a few months of one another, right? Like
I think so.
2016. Yeah.
And one was sudden and one was pretty, I think before he passed away, it was only recently revealed he was in bad shape.
Yeah. Bowie he had cancer for a while, and
but he kept it under wraps for a while, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, nobody really knew about it for a long time. Yeah, but those are 2 really good ones.
What about you guys?
Those are great. I've got 2 that come to mind, not to steal anyone's thunder, but Tom Petty is one that I really wish was still making music. I had the fortune to see both Mike Campbell twice last year and see Stevie Nicks once last year, and they both had just incredible tributes to the man. Sharing stories and singing songs. And I was like, man, I wish we had more Tom Petty music. The other one for me, which will come as no surprise to you, Kevin, is John Prine. There is not another songwriter in the world, in my estimation, that holds a candle to that man. And he gave us 7 or 8 great records. I think his last one was probably his best one, and I would have loved to have had the chance to see him in person and to get more from him. So,
yeah,
he's got a great song that's fitting the "When I Get to Heaven" song. That
yes,
kind of
absolutely.
like a nice memorial to him.
His son is producing and has produced an album now with one of my favorite songwriters of all time. Both are obviously very heavily influenced by John Prine, and I'm very, very excited for the rest of that record. They put a single out last week, I think, for his son Tommy, and it's very good. Would recommend that for listening as well.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Tom Petty would be on my list. I got the opportunity my wife gave me for Christmas of 2016. She got me tickets to go see Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers in Nashville. So we went and saw him probably about 5 months before he passed.
I was going to say, that's when he died, right? Yeah, same here.
Yeah. It's awesome.
How did he look? I heard that those last tours, he was relatively immobile and battling through pain.
He seemed, he was never the most mobile, jump around guy anyway.
Yeah, true. That's a good point.
But, he seemed fine. I mean, the band was, the way they were doing that tour is they would, whatever region of the country their concert dates were, they would find a big house somewhere in that part of the country, and that would be their base. And they would go to the airport in the afternoon, fly in for the show, and then fly back. So there wasn't a lot of time for sound checks and such. So it was a little rough, but not, they've done this 1,000 times. Right. It wasn't bad.
I'm grateful I got to see Tom Petty perform. I think twice I got to see him in concert. Once was like, I've always wanted to see him, and I got to see him, and I think I saw him another time too. And he's towards the top of my list too. That was a hell of a bummer. That was a sad day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he every year on the date of his passing, I'll find something to drink, a bottle of something to toast him with, and I'll listen to the Wildflowers album from beginning to end.
Oh gosh.
And then
heartbreaker album.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, when my mom was real sick, and I was, she was really sick, and it was, October 2nd. And so I sat down beside her bed, and she wasn't really conscious at the time, but the last album she listened to was Wildflowers by Tom Petty, because she passed early the next morning. And so that album has a special meaning to me beyond just, it being an affection for Tom Petty.
Indeed.
Yeah. It's a great one.
Neil Peart is another. And
I'm a huge Rush fan.
Oh yeah.
Giant Rush fan.
So yeah, and again, but you think they were slowing down at that point.
They had announced they were going to stop live touring a few months before he died.
But I'd love to see what they would come up with today, because it was all very relevant, all very thoughtful. And then the other, it's been, over 30 years since he died, but Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Sure.
I think,
man, what music would we have received from Stevie Ray Vaughan in the last 3 decades?
Yep.
Do you know the crazy story about that night?
Tell us.
I would love to. When that material was like, I don't know either. I was just wondering if you knew any crazy stories about that night. So he was it was a festival or something he played, and then he got in a helicopter, and there's a helicopter crash. There's a lot of confusion, as there is often after an accident. And for the first few hours, it was believed that Eric Clapton was also in the same helicopter because he played at the show. And just as tragic as it was to lose Stevie Ray Vaughan, imagine if both of them had passed away in that same night in the mid-80s.
Right.
And so for a while, people thought that both had died in that helicopter accident.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he had rushed to get on that first helicopter.
Mhm.
Did he?
And had actually asked some people that were already on it, hey, I need to go.
Oh no, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Oh, so
you
sad.
know, so yeah, it's very sad.
I'm just so blown away though by how many of our favorite guitar players now are so heavily influenced by him. People like Gary Clark Jr., Marcus King, John Mayer, um, even I think to a slightly lesser extent, maybe like Daniel Donato.
Yeah.
They all list this guy as an influence. He's maybe the most influential guitar player in the last 50 years in terms of guitar players that we love and respect now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some happy stuff.
Yeah. Let's okay. Wow. That's kind of tough after talking about all these people that have passed, but thankful that we've got their music. I think the takeaway of all of that is, if there's an artist that you love that means something to you, especially if they're getting up there in years, if you have an opportunity to go see them, go. Don't
Walk,
live
don't run.
with
Run,
regret.
don't walk.
Yeah. Ticketmaster fees be damned.
Sons of bitches.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't like to see that go
They're the
away, I'm
word.
pretty sure. But yes. Yeah, go see the shows.
Yeah. But I think that there's a lot to be said, and I think all these people would say the same thing, is that there is still really good music being made, and there are a
Definitely.
lot of people that are out there today that have been influenced by the people that we talked about in a very positive way. And one way to help pay homage and tribute to them is to listen to the people that they have inspired.
Mhm. Yep. I would agree with that. Thinking about John Prine, obviously I'm maybe the biggest fanboy of him, but thinking about how many great songwriters that he influenced, people like Casey Musgraves and Jason Isbell and Rusty Kelly and Margot Price and Marcus Mumford and Nathaniel Rateliff, like all these people that directly kind of descend from that family tree.
Right.
That's a great way, I think, to kind of enjoy some of the things we loved about artists that we've lost, is to go and see the people they've inspired.
Yep.
It's a blast for me to be like, you know what? I think they wrote that line because they were listening to a John Prine song
There you go.
at the time, or they were influenced by him. It's the best.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. All right. Well, Drew, we've kept Phil here for a little while now, so we're going to kind of wrap things up here. But
I didn't get to do my impression.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I'd kind of put you on the spot about your impression. But but if you've got it, let's go. Let's hear it.
All right. This is my impression of AC/DC guitarist Angus Young, wondering why his schoolboy outfit isn't ready for the show.
Okay.
Oh, I need my knickers. I can't go on stage unless I got my knickers to play the guitar. This time to play the tune. I gotta get out there. Oi. Thank you.
Oi,
That was
oi.
Angus Young wondering why his schoolboy outfit isn't ready before he takes the stage with AC/DC.
It's fantastic.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. You need a drink after that. That was good. Now, do you do impressions when you do Phil Talks Whiskey?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
They come up a little more organically. They come up a little more. Yeah.
Hey, so as we're wrapping things up, Phil, tell everybody again where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on social media is the best place. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Derby City Phil, all one word. You can find me on the Facebook. I got a page there called Phil Talks Whiskey. I'm always posting interesting stuff happening around the world of bourbon and whiskey. And of course, you can reach me via email, phil@philtalkswhiskey.com. And I'd love to host a custom bourbon adventure for you.
Awesome.
Hey, and I'll give them anyone who reaches out and mentions the Bourbon Turntable podcast, I'll give them the special rate of 25% above whatever I was going to charge before as a fee.
Oh, that's
a hard fee. That's rough. I know.
That checks out.
That checks out.
Something's come with a premium. Yes. It's like buying that 6-year-old bottle of MGP whiskey. Hey, it's $50 here, it's $75 here. Okay, great. What am I going to do? All right. Drew, where can people find you?
Yeah. You can find me mostly on Instagram at drew.crawley63. I also have a website, drewcrawleymusic.com, that links to all the socials and the places to find my music as well. I did just release a single. It's called Chestnut Street. I'm very excited about that, very proud of that one. So I'd be honored if you take a minute out of your day and listen to that if you're listening to the show now.
Why 63? Why 63 at the end of your name?
Great question, Phil. So my great grandfather was a blues and jazz guitarist, and when he passed away, he left me a 1963 Fender Jaguar with all of its original parts. It's worth more than I am, dead or alive. And so it mostly stays at home in protective case and all that good jazz. But it is 1963 is the year of my favorite guitar that I own.
Good answer.
Yep.
Mine's Derby City Phil because I live in Derby City, and I'm also named Phil.
And your name's Phil.
That's all I got.
And Phil Talks Whiskey is because, there's a logic to it.
I originally had this complicated name for my business. It was going to be called 3065 Whiskey Adventures because 3065 is the hazard plaque that trucks carry if they're doing high proof spirits through the U.S. Department of Transportation. So you see trucks 3065, what are they doing? They're moving whiskey through Kentucky. That's what I'll be doing. And my wife said, if you have to explain the name of your company every time someone asks, it's not clever. It's just stupid. It's a lot of work. Just tell them who you are and what you do in your company name. And so that makes much more sense. But I did mock-ups of this 3065 logo, and I thought it looked all cool. And I told some friends, like, it's 365-day whiskey. No. So your story that's a great reason to have 63 on your name. That's my point. I'm sorry, Kevin. You were talking about the damn show.
Bourbon Turntable. Yeah, talking about the show. What do you know? Bourbon Turntable. We call it Bourbon Turntable because we talk about bourbon and we talk about music, and you play music on a turntable. So there you go. If you want to watch the show, you can watch this very show on YouTube. Go over to YouTube, hit subscribe so you don't miss a thing. You don't want to miss Phil. If you can see the expression on his face when he's doing that Angus Young impersonation,
it's like he's in the room.
It is. You would think, well, wait a minute.
How did Phil get Angus Young to show up in his Louisville home at this moment?
I can practically hear Girls Got Rhythm right there. If you want to listen to the show instead, you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platform, as long as it's Apple, Spotify, or Google. We have a Facebook page where we post all of our shows. We have a Facebook group where we encourage people to go there. Tell us what you're listening to. Tell us what you're drinking. Maybe it'll inspire somebody to try that whiskey or to try that new artist. We'd love to interact with you guys there. Leave comments on the show. We'll follow up with you on that as well. So we appreciate you listening all the time. We love to hear from folks. So let us hear from you. How about that? So first of all, cheers and congratulations to Drew.
Yeah, again. Engage. That's tremendous. Congratulations.
Cheers. And on behalf of Drew and Phil and myself, until next time, cheers, love, and free bird.
See you, everyone.
Good night.
All right.